The Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection is hosting its 11th annual lecture in partnership with the University of Johannesburg on the 6th of December from 6:30 p.m. until 8:30 p.m. The Mapungubwe Annual Lecture is a flagship event in our Strategic Reflection program. It occupies a prestigious place in the intellectual landscape and has attracted wide audiences since it was first launched in 2012. This year's lecture will be delivered by Prof. Tshilidzi Marwala, Director of the United Nations University and UN Under-Secretary General under the theme, The Perils and Welfare Effects of Artificial Intelligence, Wither South Africa. My name is Zamanzima Mazibuga Makena, and I'm a senior researcher at MISTRA. And I have Prof. Tshilidzi Marwala here with me.
Good evening, Zamanzima, from Tokyo, Japan. In Japan, we actually say "konbawa."
We're all looking forward to the talk, and this interview is not to get into the meat of what you'll be discussing on the 6th of December, but just to get a feel of your insights regarding the topic. And just to start off, in an interview with the United Nations University, you stated that before choosing what PhD you would pursue, you asked yourself the following question: if I'm going to be a useful instrument for development of South Africa, what career path should I take? And then you chose AI. So in what ways has this career path lived up to helping you be that instrument for development of South Africa? And in what ways can young people use AI as an instrument to address challenges that the country faces?
I got into AI from engineering. Mm-hmm. So my approach to AI has predominantly been from an engineering perspective. And we know the challenges of South Africa. I think these are the challenges of lack of technical capacity in our institutions. I think the issues of energy, the issues of water, actually can be summarized by the fact that we don't have enough people who are technically trained, who are leading these institutions, both at the institutional level and at the political level. So if we are to change this trajectory, we will need to get everyone from the lawmakers, from the ministers, all the way down, to have a certain minimum of technical competence. Because it is clear that delivering water reliably is a technical matter. Now, coming to AI itself, when I went to Cambridge to do a PhD after having done undergrad and master's in mechanical engineering, and I arrived there and I did not really know what I was going to do it on. And of course, at one stage I was sitting next to Nando de Freitas, and he was doing a PhD in AI. That's how I ended up in AI. But my topic for my PhD was, how do you use AI to be able to detect when structures or systems or engines of cars are no longer functioning properly? Now, if I were to contextualize my PhD thesis to the biggest problem of our time in South Africa, the problem of energy availability, I would say that you would use it to predict when things are going to fail. And once you make the prediction, you can be able to plan accordingly so that that failure does not result in some form of blackout.
So algorithms, we know that they rely on inputs from designers and readily available data, which makes them open to integral bias. This often mirrors the unequal society in which we live. How then do we as South Africans ensure that we are represented in the development of AI and machine learning technologies, and therefore have access to these technologies?
The issue of data really is, it comes to gathering data. It just turns out that there's more data that has been collected in the global north compared to data that is collected in the global south. Today, I was at the university called Tohoku University in Japan, and they were telling me that they are developing large language models similar to ChatGPT for Japanese. And of course, to train these large models, you need data. And of course, it will be written data here because the popular feature of ChatGPT is its ability to write essays for you, or to write stories, or to summarize issues for you. So it needs to learn the language. It needs to learn how the information from the source. It turns out that 50% of all the data that is on the internet is in English. And only 4% of the data that is on the internet is in Japanese, which is quite high given their population. And you can imagine how much data is in isiZulu or in Chivenda, my own language. Almost close to nothing. What does this mean? This actually means that when you create your own large language models for our local languages, those large language models are not going to work very, very well. In fact, they're not going to work well at all. Now, the question is, what do we do? Of course, you will say, okay, you need to generate more data, which we know is difficult because it means you need to have more people using the language and also writing things that are recorded on the internet. Very, very difficult. Then the engineers come to us and say they have a solution. What is the solution? We are going to generate data using a computer. Instead of us going to sentences that were written by people in reports and so on and so forth, we are going to make a computer write as many text as possible so that we have data to train an AI algorithm that will be able to write essays for us. In fact, the Gartner Group actually claims that 60% of all data that is going to be used is going to be synthetic. Now, unfortunately, synthetic data is not as good as the real data. So even though synthetic data will be able to deal with some of those biases that you've just talked about, it is not a foolproof solution. And because of that, we, as the United Nations, certainly me, I have issued a policy brief on the use of synthetic data, a fair use of synthetic data to train AI to deal with issues of bias, and so on and so forth. And we have appointed an international committee that is going to come up with a global policy on the use of synthetic data. It's unavoidable, we have to use it. But the question is, what are some of the things that we need to, what are some of the best practices, what are some of the ethical issues that we need to be aware of? In fact, we are also saying that if you use synthetic data, you should state that you have used synthetic data and how much synthetic data you have used, so that the users are informed about the consequences of the use of these algorithms.
What insights has your role as the Deputy Chair of the Presidential Commission on the 4IR given you on what it takes to actually bring ideas to government and translating those ideas to policy?
To answer your question, we need to go and look at the recommendations of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And of course, these recommendations were published even before. I mean, by 2020, they were already published. So we really had this report for quite a while. First recommendation, educate people on AI and related technologies. Excellent recommendation. We need to educate people. And education, not necessarily from the technical, of course from the technical level, but also literacy education. And of course, as a former Vice Chancellor of University of Johannesburg, I am proud that all the 50,000 students at the University of Johannesburg have to take a literary AI course as a matter of compulsory. The second recommendation, establish an artificial intelligence institute. And of course, the government, the Department of Communication, has established such institute. It is based at the University of Johannesburg and the Tshwane University of Technology. Very, very important. This institute must now start telling us what is to be done about large language models with respect to our own languages. What is to be done about the application of AI in health, in transportation, within the South African context. Third recommendation, invest in data. Again, collection of data really should be priority number one. And if you can't collect data using technologies to generate synthetic data, is probably priority number two. And the third recommendation is about incentivizing the adoption of these technologies. Let's incentivize governments, that is government departments, let us incentivize state-owned enterprises, let us incentivize companies to adopt these technologies. The fourth recommendation is to invest in infrastructure. Of course, the infrastructure of data collection is expensive. We need to invest in it. The infrastructure of data computation, the high performance computing facility at the CSIR, is an excellent investment of example of the investment into infrastructure. The infrastructure of the algorithms themselves, you know. Then the fifth recommendation, train lawmakers to understand these technologies. The lawmakers must understand these technologies so that they are able to craft laws and regulations that make sense. The seventh one is really about implementation of these ideas. There were 8 recommendations. I did not talk about the 8th one. The 8th one is really about manufacturing. We felt that manufacturing, remanufacturing, reindustrialization is an important issue. And we say, invest into technologies such as AI to revamp the manufacturing sector of South Africa.
And now, given the challenges facing the South African economy and the government, where do we look for dynamism in innovation in AI in South Africa? Do we look at the government? Do we look at private sector? Probably like a combination of a couple of people and institutions, but where do we find the balance in where we look for this dynamism and innovation?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, much of this technology is in private hands. I mean, if we look at the leading country in AI, which is United States now, there was a competition between China and United States, but it is clear that United States is ahead. ChatGPT is a US platform, but it's a US platform. And it is generated by private companies. It is clear that much of this knowledge, it is clear that the majority of the most skilled engineers in this subject, everywhere you go, are outside government than inside government. Maybe China might be slightly different, certainly in state-owned enterprises, they might have some of the big experts there. But certainly if you go to many parts of the world, it is in the private sector. Now, let's come to here in South Africa. Do we realistically think that a government department can develop expertise in back propagation, deep learning algorithm? I don't think so. Do we realistically think that a government department is going to be at the top of the game when it comes to the issue of generative adversarial networks? Of course, no, which are quite essential now for generating synthetic data. Of course, no. But this does not mean government does not have a role to play. Government actually has a role to play, and we defined it in the 4th Industrial Revolution report. Incentivize adoption of this technology. Where do those incentive schemes Where should those incentive schemes come from? They should come from government, whether it is the issue of tax breaks, whether it is the issue of capacitating research and development, because even in the best of countries, such as United States in this technology, much of the algorithms were done at universities using resources that were invested by government, but it was being done outside government.
If we look now at MISTRA, which is an organization that takes a long-term view on the strategic challenges facing South Africa, how should such a research institution or any other research institution or think tank, how do we start thinking about harnessing AI to strengthen research outcomes and have wider policy impact?
We need to be specific now. What are the specific projects? What are the specific areas of investment where South Africa is going to have a competitive advantage and needs to invest in that? What are some of the necessary conditions that we need to put into place? Data is one of them. Understanding algorithm is another one. Identifying good applications is another one. And be able to commercialize everything that you create is another aspect.
That's the end of our questions. We just wanted a bit of a teaser to see what you think about this topic and what we should be expecting to hear from you. So thank you so much again for making the time. And so if you, like me, would like to hear more from Prof. Marwala, join us on the 6th of December. You can go onto the MISTRA website at mistra.org.za to find the link for our annual lecture. Thank you so much.